an original prayer that she offered. Ty, beautiful job that she just did tying together all of the things and more which we get to celebrate, tying together so much of our parish's history, this day, this holy year, connection with then Pope, now St. John Paul II, and our icon of Our Lady of Czestochowa, the Mnsgnrs whom we celebrate tonight, and she tied that together so beautifully. So, I want to begin. I want to ask Michaela, so what was it, and I'll pass you the mic, what was it, how did you go about the challenge, the opportunity, and the responsibility to integrate so much history, significance of this day, history of this parish, history of the diocese, this holy year, into a prayer that you could offer, compose and offer with such meaning and such impact?
Thank you. So, honestly, I was at first a little overwhelmed. I was like, whoa, this is really big. And it was something I worked on, but I didn't really feel like my heart was in it. I didn't really feel like it was what it needed to be until I went on a retreat, and I had the most amazing holy hour I've ever had. And after that, I was like, okay, come Holy Spirit, put the words that need to be written here together. And he allowed me to really dig into a lot of what I had been kind of researching and trying to come up with, and it flowed and let the Holy Spirit take over.
Oh my, for you.
Are there any particular words, images, the way you structured the prayer? I know you incorporated Latin with English as a nod to our church's first language. We are a church of many languages, but still you gave that nod to history. Certain words, symbols, structure you want to highlight in terms of how you approach this, things that people might want to look for in that prayer?
Yes, so I did some research on St. Pope John Paul II because I didn't know that much about him before this. And I didn't realize how much, how many trials he had before he became a priest and before he became the Pope. And yeah, losing, I think he lost all his family members by his young adulthood. And I didn't realize how hard that was and how much turning to Our Lady, especially Our Lady of Czestochowa, in that time was what gave him the strength and the passion. And his school being shut down and World War II and all that, all of his dreams and desires and his surroundings were shut down, and all of a sudden, by turning to Our Lady, he was able to have the strength to consider the priesthood and to become the Pope that he never would have become if he hadn't had those trials. And that really inspired me to write about his surrender to Our Lady and the totus tuus, and how absolutely beautiful that is and how relatable for all of us. So that was special.
My goodness.
It's very fitting and appropriate, and I consider it imperative to have Michaela and Christine Brennan up here together. First off, that gives me another opportunity to acknowledge Christine Brennan as the sitting recipient of the Mnsgnr Gerald Lawrence Lewis Award for Excellence in Teaching, which honors excellence in teaching in the Diocese of Raleigh. Christine Brennan is a teacher in every sense of the word, whether it be in the classroom at Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic School, or whether it be in working with our Wednesday evening choir. It has spanned multiple generations, as she now is a grandmother, so her grandchildren coming along. And I'd like to point out with Michaela and Christine up here that when the Lewis Award was presented to Christine last April, that she made a point, she requested specifically for Michaela and R.A. Michelle, another young lady participates in our choir. And she's not here tonight because she's on the road to be part of a wedding, to sing in a wedding. So, sharing her ministry, that's why she's not here. But she made a point to ask Michaela and Aria to come and sing with the Our Lady of Lord's choir for her presentation mass. So I have to ask you, what was it? Asking specifically for them to do that, what did that mean in the scope of your all-around teaching, that you wanted to blend your teaching at school and here at St. Joseph with them? And what do you hope is the impact of Michaela's and Aria's ministries on the youngest generation of our church?
Thank you. Well, for that special event, that special day, I thought it would be really wonderful to have two of our leaders and also great alto singers to come and give some harmonies and help out the third grade choir. Mnsgnr Williams had said, I hope to hear some harmonies in that choir on that special day. And that kept ringing in my ear. And I love the choir here. I love the girls. And, that was just the perfect time to bring them in. They have been leaders in the choir, and now the girls are getting older and there's more leaders, and they help each other. The older girls train the younger girls to, when they first step up to be cantors, they accompany them at Mass, and they'll have them sing the Psalms and teach them all the little tricks that they have to learn, and they're just delightful to work with. It's a great joy for me to be able to work with the children's choir.
Thank you. Let's hear it for these two lovely ladies. I'll give a brief interlude before we go to our next discussion. Just want to point out, we'll have a little bit of time before we begin Mass. I'll explain how we're going to begin Mass tonight, but we'll have some time, people use the restroom, take a break, and hopefully take a few minutes to look at this table over here. So we have several artifacts or liturgical goods with significant meaning. So I want to make sure before we go to our next panel that I highlight each of the 7 Mnsgnrs to show the interconnectedness of this. As we know, Mnsgnrs Shugrue, Wall, and Williams are here with us this evening. 7 Mnsgnrs honored by Pope John Paul II in October of 2000. And that investiture took place at St. Michael, at the time pastored by Mnsgnr Wall. So Mnsgnr Wall, we thank you for your hospitality in welcoming all of the Church of Raleigh to that celebration. As I said at the beginning, so we have 4 Mnsgnrs from those 7 who are smiling upon us from above tonight. And we honor and pay tribute to them in very special ways. I mentioned Mnsgnr Gerald Lewis, who entered eternal life last December 16th, and October 13th of this month would have been his 93rd birthday. Bojangles was one of his favorites, so he's definitely smiling on us in honor of him. Over here at the table, this chalice and paten right here, which we will use for the celebration of the Eucharist tonight, was the chalice and paten of Mnsgnr Thomas Paul Hatton, who pastored St. Joseph from 1971 to 1973. Before then was a Raleigh native was the first African American ever to graduate from the Pontifical North American College in Rome. The Diocese of Raleigh, per Mnsgnr Haddon, has a place in universal church history. Thereafter, began his ministry in the Diocese of Raleigh. I don't have enough time to tell all the stories of things he endured in some of his early pastorates, but I'll talk to you about it later, anyone wants to know. He was pastor here for a little less than 2 years, from 1971 to 1973, prior to being appointed as rector of then Sacred Heart Cathedral. He was the first African-American rector of a Catholic cathedral in the United States. And he's ours. So Mnsgnr Haddon is with us here tonight. So this photograph in the middle right here, December 12th, 1990, that was the day when then Pope, now St. John Paul II, blessed the icon of Our Lady of Czestochowa in a private audience in the Vatican. There are a number of familiar faces in here. You can play the guessing game with that young man right there in the blue sweater. I won't say anything else about that, but you can ask me about it afterwards if you want to. But yes, that was me, yes. And also in that photograph are 2 of our charter members, my mom, Joyce Sanders Bass, and my aunt, Hazel Sanders, were also on that pilgrimage right there. So you see the icon there. Historical marker, particularly for all of our young people. There's no way we could get that through customs now. So, very poignant there. And you also see what John Paul II was wearing, his white cassock. You notice the statue that we had blessed by Father Michael Burbeck, our Vicar General, last year in our sanctuary. He is in his white cassock. We had that specially made in South America because we wanted to depict him as he welcomed our delegation. So that's why it looks like that. So there is a picture. And that is our connection with another of the Monsignors, Monsignor Tim O'Connor, who was invited to be a minister of Holy Communion at the funeral of Pope John Paul II. So those direct connections, once again, this reinforcing how we are connected, all of our Monsignors. And before I explain this marker right here, I'd like to point out that up in the front in regalia, this is Mr. Ed Rogasich, and you see him in Knights of Columbus regalia. The Knights of Columbus Council here at St. Joseph is named after another of our previous pastors, Monsignor James Keeney. So the Monsignor Keeney Council. And they will be ministering tonight. And thus, Monsignor Keeney is present with us. Did I get all 7?
Yep.
The connectedness of this parish with the local church and the universal church is amazing. And lastly, before we go to our next panel, we'll begin Mass, we'll walk over and stop outside at the entrance doors where we will bless this bronze cast marker right here. We never had a dedication stone or marker for no particular reason, but it needs to be put in place, noting the inception of this parish, October 11th, 1968. Still going strong, 57 years later. We have so many longtime pillars of this community here tonight, too many to name, but I will make specific mention of the fact our parish has 6 living charter members. All 6 of them are here tonight. Sorry. Let's stand very quickly. Mrs. Mary Woods Curry. Mrs. Elizabeth Stanley Chance. Mr. Danny Coleman. Mrs. Vicky Hewitt McNeil. Ms. Hazel Sanders. And Mrs. Joyce Sanders Bass. Thank you all. All right, so the last thing we want to do here, and then like I said, we'll have a little break before Mass, everyone can get ready. I'd like to invite, so among the 3 Monsignors honored 25 years ago still in ministry in the Diocese of Raleigh, 2 of the 3 were pastors of St. Joseph. So I'd like to invite Monsignors Michael Shugrue and John Williams to come join me here, please. I think they're excited. I know we are absolutely excited for them to be here. The living history that you see right here, the number of roles in which they have served, both of them were mentors of priests per their service as the vicar for priests in the Diocese of Raleigh. Both of them don't have enough time to talk about all of the pastoral assignments that they have covered and the various roles. Monsignor Williams was our longest serving pastor here at St. Joseph, 12 years. And just like I explained earlier with Monsignor Haddon, we loved all of our pastors. And while the faithful were sad to see him go, the doors he opened for the church, we sent him forth proudly because we knew what his ministerial call was at the cathedral, then at St. Mary's in Wilmington. The same can be said of Monsignor Shugrue, who followed Monsignor Haddon. And Monsignor Shugrue, after departing St. Joseph, and he went on to do a few other things. He was rector of the cathedral. He was vicar general of the diocese. And he was the diocesan administrator between Bishops Michael Burbidge and Luis Rafael Zorano. So he did quite well for himself. Monsignor Williams' ministry always was a testament to the evangelical call of St. Joseph. I met him as an undergraduate at UNC Chapel Hill. He was pastor of Immaculate Conception Parish in Clinton. The amount of time this man spent going into the community, literally into the fields to meet people. I got to do it one time with him. Aligns perfectly with the evangelical call to reach out to those who are marginalized by society and bring them to the church, which has been a hallmark of St. Joseph. So, an absolute blessing there. So let's just chat a little bit. I'm going to begin. Monsignor Shugrue, so you succeeded Monsignor Haddon in his historic ministries at St. Joseph and at the cathedral. What do you see as the enduring fruits of Monsignor Haddon, the man and then the pastor, per his groundbreaking ministries in the Diocese of Raleigh and the Universal Church?
how much time do we have? Just one thing I always admired about Mnsgnr Haddon was his persistence. He did not let obstacles get in his way, or if they were, he kept moving. We were talking at the table tonight about successful retirement. Principle 1, keep moving. Keep your mind engaged. Keep your body moving. Keep up with your family and friends. I would say Mnsgnr Haddon had many gifts and many talents, but he always had time for you. And so it's hard to just say this in a word or two, but he was extremely careful in preparing for ministry. His homilies were just classic because you could almost count the words and the minutes, and it was just so well done that you thought, maybe I better get on the train here and get moving here, and be a little more careful about what I'm doing. So I would say his seriousness about ministry and his care for people and also for what he was called to do.
How did your St. Joseph pastorship, and more specifically the parishioners, contribute to the foundation upon which you built subsequent decades of parish and diocesan leadership?
I would say, while I was here, I was struck by the community being unable to be stopped, like Mnsgnr Haddon. Many were coming from St. Monica's Parish, the black parish in downtown Raleigh, and many felt disenfranchised, just felt wondering, where is home now? We just left our home, St. Monica's. That's where we were baptized, where we were married, where we knew the community. Now we're in a community where we don't know anybody except ourselves. So I would say that was what was remarkable to me, was people who were hurting were able to kind of come together and to have a sense of hope, a sense of hope, and became a parish that is still one of the most welcoming and open for anybody. Anybody who wants to come is welcomed here. We don't have labels and we don't have tags on who can come and who cannot come and that sort of thing. But for a community that has gone through, you might say, the storm and come out of it more welcoming, it was remarkable. And the other part that was remarkable, because it happened early, was, and you all know this, was that often a natural integration happened. And I was looking around and wondering, what is going on here? People at baptisms, there was a black godfather and maybe a Hispanic godmother, or it didn't matter. And these were all built on friendships, on relationships. Nobody was told, we need to do this. It just happened. Well, it didn't just happen. People worked at that. And so the parish, I remember the parish council chair, I can't remember his name. He was a big man, like a football player. and he was African American. That was startling at that time, and he was good. He was really good at what he did, and he brought people together rather than divided them. So I would say that experience of going through a very difficult time and coming out of it stronger and more welcoming is something that I've tried to keep myself.
Thank you, Mnsgnr. Shugrue. Mnsgnr. Williams. Mnsgnr. James Patrick Keeney, you delivered the homily at Mnsgnr. Keeney's Mass of Christian Burial. How do you hope Mnsgnr. Keeney's legacy of lifelong learning, including learning Spanish in retirement so he could minister to missions in retirement, how do you hope his legacy of lifelong learning inspires current and future generations of the church, especially here at St. Joseph?
In my sermon, I should have made more of that. Instead, I preached on something, and I thank God that Bishop Burbage, at the end of the Mass, he had presided, of course, brought in these things, because if he hadn't, I think the family would have been a bit offended by what they thought I said. So I'm going to tell you what I did say and make sure that you'll understand it the way I want it to. You know, Father Keeney was my spiritual father. When I came into the diocese, I got to know Father Haddon, and then I needed a spiritual father, and Father Keeney at nearby St. Joseph's came to be my confessor. And when I was moved from Raleigh to Burlington, I would come back to see Father Keeney. And Father Keeney seemed like a mild man, and he was. But when I was pastor in Clinton, and the parish had grown from about 200 people to almost 10,000 people in a matter of just a few years in this historic migration which took place in North Carolina, particularly in Duplin and Sampson County, I felt overwhelmed. And I couldn't quite get the diocese to understand. But I talked to Father Keeney at a retreat, and he listened, and by the end of that retreat, I had an assistant pastor, unthinkable. Clinton would have one, and the diocese was going to pay him. And that was Father Keeney's intervention. Why didn't I mention that at the funeral? Instead, I talked about a saying of St. Ignatius Loyola and the title of an autobiography of one of the most famous American Jesuits, John Lafarge, who was a champion of interracial justice, and my father collaborated with him in the 1930s and 40s. The title of the book was "The Manna is Ordinary," which means about nothing to most of us, except that it meant everything to St. Ignatius. It has nothing to do with manners like good manners or bad manners. You catch a little bit of it in the manner of life or his manner of speaking. And ordinary is totally different from the word ordinary as we hear it used. Many of us couldn't quite understand why the Sundays after Pentecost were suddenly Sundays in ordinary time, like there really wasn't much happening between Pentecost and Christ the King and Advent. We think of it as an ordinary day, an ordinary guy. And in St. Ignatius' understanding of that word, to have respect for order, to put things in their place, to give attention to the most important things, should be the characteristic of all of his followers. And it's a word in Jesuit parlance which means everything. So an ordinary life is really an extraordinary life because there's so much disorder in our times. So much disorder, just we have disorder in the traffic coming in today. There's disorder in our lives. But oh, when there is an order in which you see people living according to God's order of putting His values and His commandments and His priorities in their place. I thought Father Keeney was that man. I meant to say it. And yet soon afterwards somebody came up and said, well, it's nice that you showed him as a nice old ordinary guy. Anyway, Father Keeney, Mnsgnr Keeney's sister and others of the family who were there got charmed into the full picture by our bishop. Thank you for Bishop Burbage. And I'm so happy to be looking at the moment at Mnsgnr Wall, who was the director of vocations when I came along in 1974, 1975. He showed so much patience with me and assigned me with a saintly priest in Burlington, North Carolina, and I got to meet sequentially wonderful priests of the diocese. I'm so grateful for my life in this diocese. And thank you for Father Wall for being so patient with me when I came. Have I said enough about Father King?
So we have one final question, and just to give a historical context, I'd like to point out, so the 7 Monsignors vested in 2000 were the first for the Diocese of Raleigh in about 25 years at least. And Monsignor Williams was the one of the 7. He was the only one ordained to the priesthood by Bishop Gosman. So just historical detail there, Bishop, full circle, that one of the priests, Bishop Gosman, ordained.
And I honor his memory, and you know how much he loved this church.
That he did. So our last question, speaking of this very parish, for which you were the longest tenured pastor here. So among your pastoral hallmarks here at St. Joseph was fostering and celebrating the church's universality, certainly through music, the number of masses in different languages that grew during your 12 years. What specific qualities, human, historic, current, tangible, intangible, What specific qualities render St. Joseph the parish as an authentic manifestation of the Catholic or universal church?
Wow.
From its beginning in 1968, St. Joseph's was intentionally a multiracial congregation. There were just about 2 races, but that would soon change. And there would be layers of different nationalities who would arrive. And it reflected not only different countries in Europe that had not had migrations to North Carolina in great numbers, and that was the Polish people who found a home here. There were the people from Southeast Asia, not only Vietnamese, but Montagnards who found a home here. There would be the Montagnards. There would be the Igbo people and others, many representing many other countries of both English and French speaking backgrounds that would find a home here. The Catholicity represented here was something that felt so natural. We were having masses in multiple languages. And it still goes on, even though some of the groups have been able to establish churches in other parts of the area that are flourishing. But even here, people have had an opportunity to express the culture that was theirs. I knew there would be some surprises for the Mnsgnrs when we would get here. And I was thinking, maybe, just maybe, they'll gather together a few singers to sing Tiny King for me tonight. I said, why not? Someone there will remember that was one of my favorite songs, a great black spiritual that I was introduced to my first Christmas year, and asked that it please be sung every Christmas. And even though I left in the heat of the summer, they sang Tiny King at one of my closing masses. Thank you. It was these little things that represent our being at home. Yes, we would have our skirmishes. Of course, there are going to be different ways of seasoning the spaghetti sauce. But we were a family, and we grew as a family. And whatever disagreements we had, we would come back as a family. There's a richness here, and St. Joseph's has grown as it has grown, and it had it early on. We've got to stop to stay on time. That's a little bit of what I wanted to say, and
Yes, we could stay here and listen to them all night. We absolutely could. Let's hear it from Mnsgnr Michael Shugrue and Mnsgnr John Rose.
one thing I can say just in a sentence. Someone who would be here tonight if he could is a former pastor, Father Francis Mnsgnr. He is in very ill health in Southern Pines, but I I wanted Mnsgnr Shugrue to give a memory of young Father Frank on the campus of St. Joseph's when he was one of the early pastors.
Just a short review. You can remain, well, all right. I think it could be done with a standing. But my recollection of Father Frank here when I was visiting was he was out there cutting the grass. And if you've ever tried to do that by yourself at St. Joseph here, you know that's like an all-day affair. And he actually enjoyed it. But I began to wonder, is this what is ahead for me? And he just kept at it, and it was just, I've never seen anything quite like it. And then I think he embarrassed the rest of the parish into forming a maintenance committee. You know, you didn't want your pastor to have a heart attack out in the grass, cutting grass. That would not look good. But in any case, I just remember him enjoying getting out in the air, getting on that motorized grass cutter, and going at it. And the place really looked like a golf course. I mean, if you knew Father Frank, he was very Germanic, detail. He didn't miss too much at all, like Monsignor had. Eye for the detail. And but I think just the image of him cutting the grass, I've never gotten that out of my mind. Just
Thank you again, Mnsgnr Shugrue, Mnsgnr Williams. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we've got 20 minutes to Mass, so we'll let our Monsignors get vested. Anyone needs to use the restroom. At Rogasich, Father Keeney Council, other members of the Knights of Columbus. So at about 7:22, 23, somewhere in that range, they're going to lead us out the doors at the other end of the hall, and we'll walk over to the entrance to the sanctuary. We'll stop there for a minute, and we have a rite of blessing for this marker right here. And Mnsgnr Shugrue will lead that blessing. So let's take a few minutes, use the restroom to put trash away. I don't have enough time. I'm not going to try to name names of all the people who helped make this possible. You know who you are. Thank you to all. So we will let our priest vest, use the restroom. About 7:22:23, the Knights will lead us over. We'll do a blessing of this new marker, and then we'll go right into Mass. Thank you. Okay? And we'll video in front.